So this is the second report by the World Bank trying to measure how easy it is to do business in South Africa. And obviously there are a number of issues and areas that they look at in terms of when people want to apply for businesses in South Africa, in terms of permits when it comes to construction, electricity, reliability, and so forth. So this is the second report, but we are joined by the project leader of the World Bank, Musa Traore, who's just going to go through the report with us. Thanks so much for your time, Musa. Perhaps just explain to us, this is the second report. The first report was released in 2015. What are some of the key elements that came out of this report?
Well, I think one of the big things that we see is that, across the 5 indicator areas that we look at, we see that there are variations in how different locations perform across South Africa. So, for instance, we have, certain cities that lead on one indicator and others that lead on others. If you look at South Africa as a whole, we see that, on average, the time to do processes is relatively competitive in 3 areas, which are construction permits, getting construction permits, registering property, enforcing contracts. But in getting electricity, it's somewhat slow. So we see that also the complexity of these processes is something that needs to be further streamlined.
And this report specifically focuses on, doesn't only focus on Johannesburg, which is obviously the central hub of business. It focuses on 9 different areas. Perhaps if you can pick 2 areas that did reasonably well compared to the 2015 reports. I know you guys mentioned Cape Town and Mangaung.
So, particularly with Mangaung, what we saw was in the area of property transfers and property registration. It was a significant improvement, moving from the last position on the ranking back in 2015 to the top 1 now. And that was really because they decided to close the gap through a concerted effort of working on reforms, which is what we see. There are good practices that can be found in different locations. For example, even though Cape Town is at the top in getting electricity in terms of performance, we see that Buffalo City actually has the fastest time to obtain an electricity connection for a commercial warehouse.
And then just lastly, speak to us about how easy is it to do business in South Africa? Are people looking at South Africa as investor friendly? Are people wanting to come and put their money here?
Well, I think the answer to your question, or the way to really answer your question, is that there have been improvements, right? What we're seeing is from 2015 to the present, we've seen reforms across 5 different cities that have been measured in the study. So definitely conditions are getting better for doing business in South Africa. The pace has been slow, but we see that there are good practices to be found across the country for locations to learn from each other.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Well, there it is, Jeremy. So obviously we can't pinpoint which province or which city is the best place to do business in South Africa, because obviously there's a lot of red tape when it comes to electricity reliability and getting permits for contracts. And they also touched on, the ports in South Africa and how that needs to be obviously jacked up and needs to be looked at, because when it comes to trade, there are obviously a lot of issues there. So South Africa obviously a favoured destination to do business, but not number 1 yet.
And absolutely critical that efficiency and streamlining of process is concluded, because that, after all, is the key to a successful growth in GDP.